Okay, hi guys. I thought you might be interested to see this. This is my portable ham radio setup for HF, but also VHF and UHF. So a lot of you will be familiar with the Icom 705, which we've got on the top of the pack, and the pack as well is an Icom LC-192. So let me show you what I've got here. So inside the pack, I've done my tag and laminated that, but inside the pack we've got a Chameleon F loop. We've only got at the moment the 40 meter and up element of the loop, but the lower band extension will just about squeeze in there if you need it. So outer element, it's the inner loop. We've got feeder cable with a balun and a short extension as well. In this case, because this is the older version of the F loop, we don't have the telescopic for the upright. In this case we've got two short solid coaxial runs, or it looks like coaxial runs, with a barrel connector in between to join them together, and that then forms our upright, onto which, I'm not going to construct this, but just to give you an idea, the inner loop sits, and then the outer loop, a run of coax, comes around the outside to form a circle as best you can, and just a bit of Velcro on the top to secure it. And the feed point, oh, you get that apart, there you go. Okay, and the feed point on this particular loop is at the rear. So there you go, plenty more information on Chameleon's website, and I'm sure lots more videos up on YouTube or elsewhere on the internet. But there you go, that's basically the loop, so that all fits in there. Then in addition, we've got some other bits and pieces which we'll come on to. If we start here, so in addition to the internal battery on the radio, we've also got another external portable battery pack, just in case. And if necessary, we can provide power to the radio via the 12 volt cigarette lighter socket on the end of the DC power cord, which runs into the back of the radio. So there you go, into there, power on, simple as that. And then if we need to top this up, if we're out in the field, we can do that via this Usbc charging cable, which plugs into the front of the battery pack there, and then the other end can either go into a solar panel, or you can charge it off the car, or whatever other source you've got. Okay. Doesn't have an intelligent charging circuit. It does have an indicator to show you how much charge is in the battery. So if you do charge it, you just need to be a little careful and keep an eye on that. Okay. But we'll keep the battery out because that can come in handy a little later. We'll leave that one in there. And the charging cable we don't need. This cable we will need in a bit. So for now, I'll just show you how easy it is to repack this.
It is a little bit tight. There's a bit of method to get it all packed away.
There we go. That's basically it. So also in the pack, got a few other bits and pieces here. So we've got the standard battery for the IC-705. Also a couple of other USB Type-Cs and other connections for charging phones and whatever else. Also some BNC to PL adapters just in case. And usually in that pocket there I would carry any VHF, UHF whips. So we'll keep those out. I'll show you those in a second. Okay, so that's about it for the pack. Obviously, with the loop, there's no need for me to carry an additional antenna analyzer because it's a resonant antenna, so no need for that. So that saves a bit of space in the pack. Obviously, if I was going out with a vertical of some description, then I'd probably substitute the loop with an antenna analyzer. Okay, so as we've already said, IC-705 in the top of the pack here. If we have a quick look at the back, okay, so we've got our speaker mic connections here, and the speaker mic currently is run out of this hole on the side of the pack. That's just sitting in the side pocket. You can obviously do whatever you want with that or not. Okay, we've also got a ground or an earth cable which is running down through the inside of the pack, comes out of the hole or the access port just down the side here, and then that can be used to either just provide a ground system for the radio or to provide additional counterpoise or radial system, whatever else. Okay, and then we've also got our L connector for the BNC so that we can connect antennas through the port here. We'll come on to that. Okay, and other than that, we've got our DC power cable, which we had a look at earlier with the 12 volt cigarette lighter adapter on the end of it. So here we've got our 3000 milliamp hour extended battery. So that's back in, and if we can get focus on the camera, there you go. That's basically the part number, BP307. Okay, so true Blue Peter style, onto the L BNC adapter. I've connected a dummy load or a short run of RG174 coax. So we'll pop that back into the bag. Okay. And then let's have a look round at the rear pocket here. So in the rear pocket, we've got one Chromebook, in this case running Linux Mint. There's another video on how to go about building and configuring one of those for yourself, which I'll link up onto this one, and also a laminated copy of my license document. Okay, so we power up the radio. Okay, let's just get this to one side so we can still. Okay, so we can see then the laptop's come up and it's running Linux. Okay, and it'll just take a few seconds before it loads up Conky and establishes a connection to the radio via Wi-Fi. And there we go. So we can see here that we've got our wireless IP, 192.168.59.2 in this case, and it's got that via the built-in DHCP from, or DHCP server I should say, from the radio, which is acting as the access point. We've also got our mobile Tether IP address, and this is connected to my mobile phone in this case. And there's two reasons for connecting it to both. Obviously, the wireless connection for the radio is necessary for cat control and also to carry the audio signals, which we'll cover in a second. But the connection to the mobile phone in this case is needed for two things. One, so that if I've got coverage, if I've got a 3G or a 4G signal in this case, I can access the internet, so I can upload log entries and things of that ilk, or just look anything up that I need to. But also I'm using it for my GPS. So having now enabled the GPS service on my cell phone, my mobile phone, we can see that the GPS is being streamed via UDP and received using the GPSD daemon, I should say, or GPSD service on the laptop, and it's converted that to a Maidenhead grid locator. You can see here we've got IO90 Golf Victor. So that's basically it. We've also got a number of services that have started up. So we've got the IC-705 Wi-Fi service, which is using the cap and hang software. And we've also got a separate RigCTL daemon. Now, the cap and hang software does actually include a RigCTL daemon, but for compatibility reasons, I've moved that onto a different port, and I'm using RigCTL on the default port. So that's basically it. There are a number of applications here, but I'm going to show you this first before we get into those. So quite often, if you're out in the field, especially on a bright day, it's quite difficult to see the screen. So to aid that a little bit, I've included a very simple script that will literally just invert the colours, and that makes it, believe it or not, a little easier to view in bright sunlight. And we can toggle that backwards and forwards. Also, it's possibly worth mentioning, you can see here that we've got our hard drive disk space indicator. Now this is only a 16 gig flash drive, if you want to call it that, 16 gig flash disk built into the Chromebook itself. With the overhead of boot partitions and the OS and the apps, it really doesn't leave a lot of space free. You can see here we've got 11.2 gigs in use of the 13.8 gigs usable, giving us only 13% available disk space, which will be used up quite quickly if you're not careful. Now, there's no intention to add any additional apps onto this particular build, but the log files will start to fill up that space quite quickly. So I've got a simple housekeeping script here which I can run whenever. It's going to run that behind the scenes, you can't see what it's doing, but effectively what that's going to do is remove any journals, so any logs if you like, that are more than, I think I've set it to 7 days, but you can change it in the script very easily, and that'll just make sure that you stay on top of that. You can see now it's gone up to 14%, so that's obviously freed up a little bit of space. Okay, so that's basically it. In terms of the working environment, and then we've got a number of applications on here. So let's start with something simple like FLDigi. Okay, so when we launch that, I can just demonstrate the point. So this is basically establishing a RigCTL or hamlib connection for the cat over the Wi-Fi using the virtual serial port, and you can see if we up the frequency using FLDigi, that's being reflected on the radio. It's gone to 1407.1 there, you can see. Okay, similarly, we're currently in PSK 31. If I click tune, you can see, there you go, you can minimal SWR obviously because we're into the dummy load. And if I just put the monitor on, there you go, you can hear the audio going out. So that's pretty much it. See, no one's going to be able to hear us into the dummy load, and just to make sure, we'll put that down to no power at all. Okay, and just to demonstrate, if we were to send a CQ out using PSK 31, you can hear that going quite happily. So again, this is covered off in probably a little more detail on previous videos, but it's just to reiterate it for anyone that hasn't already seen that. Similarly, if we want to go and work some CW, further down on the band typically. Okay, we can just change that to CW. So I'm going to show you this very, very quickly. Okay, in modem, CW, cat keying, we've got it set up. Now for A4, which may differ from a previous video, A4 being the default hex address for the IC-705. And indeed, if we look at the rig control, you can see that that's using RigCat with the default IC-705 XML unmodified, so that's going to be addressing it using the A4 hex address as well. So if we're now to send a CQ, we'll hear that going out natively using the CW key built into the radio. Okay, and then switching that back is as simple as just selecting the mode of your choice and going back to, in this case, USB-D. Okay, that's it. Okay, so there you go, that's FLDigi, natively addressing the IC-705 and using the RigCTL as part of hamlib as opposed to the one built into cap and hang. Now, if anyone's interested, I'm quite happy to share details of the scripts that I've got here, but I'm not going to show them on this video because it'll just it'll drag on a little bit too long. So in addition, we've got WSJTX, which I typically use for whisper beaconing. Okay. And then we can select our mode. You can see here we're on whisper. We've already selected our operating frequency, and you can see that it's correctly set that on the radio. If we click tune, there you go, we can hear the carrier going out. And if I were to enable TX and try next, it would send out a whisper beacon. But we won't sit here and wait for that. Okay. And JS8 call. Now, in terms of the way that WSJTX and JS8 call interface with the radio, it's basically the same. So I'll show you this just on one of them. If I go into the settings and look at radio, you can see I'm actually using the RigCTL, which is going to effectively communicate with the daemon service that's running, which is the RigCTL daemon as part of hamlib, as opposed to the one provided with cap and hang. But in theory, you could use either or. As I said earlier, I'm opting to use RigCTL as part of hamlib just for compatibility purposes at the moment. Okay, and if we look at audio, you can see that is actually referencing the virtual audio interfaces that are being presented as part of the cap and hang software. So it's very much a hybrid, kind of taking the best features for what I'm seeking to achieve from various pieces of software and then bring it all together to integrate it as one solution. Okay, and we'll demonstrate this very quickly. So if I just set frequency there, we'll stick with 20 and click tune. Again, you can hear the carrier going out. Okay, so there are some other tools, not all of which get used as regularly, and some of which don't currently work for various reasons. So I'm not going to go into a great deal of detail, but suffice to say that with hamlib and the Direwolf modem, soft modem, it's not possible to sense for DCD, which means that with AX.25 you'd end up getting a lot of collisions. So whilst it will work, it's less than ideal. It'll work adequately for APRS because of the nature of APRS, but not so great for things like packet BBS services. What does work reasonably well, however, is the satellite tracking. So I've got some scripts here that I've written which use Gpredict, one for SSB satellites, one for FM satellites. but obviously you can write scripts as required to tailor it for your purposes. Okay, so behind the scenes, basically what's happening is that script is now setting the radio up for the way I need it to operate. So in the case of this particular script, you can see on the radio it's set the mode to USB on the receive, which is using VFOA. It's put the radio into split mode, and if I just toggle to VFOB, don't worry about the frequency, we'll come back to that, but you can see it's set the VFOB, which is being used for the uplink or transmit, to LSB, and that's basically all we need it to do at this point. So I'll just toggle that back. Okay, if I then, through Gpredict, go into radio control and select, let's say RS44, select the transponder mode, set it to track, T to go to the center of the transponder, and click engage, you can see here hopefully that it's tuning the downlink of the radio 435.633, 435.633, you can see counting. And if I grab my microphone so we can engage the PTT, you'll see that Gpredict is tuning the uplink compensated for Doppler, currently 145.967. There you go, 145.967 and counting. So absolutely fine for satellite work as well, albeit of course the radio is only operating half duplex, so you won't be able to hear yourself on the downlink. But other than that, as long as the Doppler is accurate, then everything should be fine. So if we come out of Gpredict, it does set it back to 14070 as well as the last thing it does in the script. And that's more for my convenience because a lot of the time I'm going to be working PSK, and also sometimes some applications, potentially FLDigi, have problems if the cat control's not set to, or sorry, if the frequency is not set to an HF frequency. Sometimes the cat fails to initialize, so it's a little bit of a safety net, but it's a nice to have. And if you ever get to the point as well, or I ever get to the point where things have screwed up, I've got a script behind the scenes which will just do a full reset. It'll stop all of the ham-related services, restart the ones I need, set the frequency on the radio to 14070, so we're free to start again. And you'll see that it's lost the radio frequency when I did that because it's restarting the connection and now it's got it back. So it only takes a few seconds. Okay, so that is pretty much it. I will show you one final thing. So the battery that we mentioned earlier, just making sure I can just about see that on the camera. Okay, so just in case I'm running a little low on juice with the laptop, as opposed to the radio for a change, I have got a cigarette lighter adapter for this as well. So I can plug that into the external power, and there you go. That's bought me another few hours operating time if needs be. Okay, so that's about it. Hopefully that gives you a few ideas about the art of the possible, and maybe a few options for how you might go about approaching working digital modes in a fairly compact single backpack without too many other bits and pieces. The only other thing that I would probably need to carry, and it kind of depends where I'm expecting to operate, but just in case, a fairly sturdy tripod as well. It's kind of a must, so that you can mount the loop, and the loop itself on the tuning unit has got a standard tripod thread adapter, which you can obviously screw into and then mount that up the same height as the loop from the ground, usually good enough to do the job. And that's it. That's pretty much everything. Hopefully that was interesting and maybe helpful, might give you a few ideas hopefully. Right, thanks, cheers guys.